10, 9.
You want answers? I want the truth!
Get ready for two guys who can't handle the truth.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
But we can. Dave Palumbo, Chris Acteto. RxMuscle.com presents Heavy Muscle Radio. Watch out!
Welcome to another episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined, as always, by the technician, Chris Acteto, on this July 16th, 2018 evening. And Chris, this is a late one for us. We're recording very late, but better late than never. We have to wait till everyone goes to sleep and disappears from our house.
It's like we're broadcasting from outer space or something. It's so late.
It's like Mission Impossible. Bum, 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 bum.
Kids are gone to bed. Do-do-do. Right. Do-do-do. Wives aren't fighting with husbands. Do-do-do. Right. Do-do-do.
I gotta
Don't worry, Amanda. That's me, not you.
Yeah, I gotta take a little high tension wire and slide out of my son's room. That's the new thing. If I don't have to tiptoe out of there, and I'm the worst at leaving the room quietly. I make a lot of noise. I bang into things, But if you if you make a creak in the floorboards, he wakes up and he's like, "Dada, dada."
Is that you? Yeah.
Dada.
You try not to move, right?
Yeah.
You try not to move or breathe. Don't breathe. Hold your breath, Dave. It's like, how'd you and Chris become bank robbers? It's incredible. What was the skill? Sneaking out of babies' rooms when they're, you try not to wake them up.
Right.
Exactly. Right, you don't even move, and you'll stay in a frozen spot for 6 minutes, right?
Oh, just to not have to go lay back down and wait till he falls asleep again. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good wait. 2 hours.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So we had it was pretty. It wasn't. I wouldn't say a super quiet weekend in the pro bodybuilding world, but we had a quiet weekend. We had that one show in Portugal. I didn't even know the show was taking place, the Portugal Pro.
Yeah.
And Hadi Choopan came out of nowhere. He's the guy, we don't know where he's going to compete next because he's got to get a visa to go compete in different places, and it's very hard for Iranians to go anywhere. Matter of fact, I thought Canada was easy, but evidently, from what I understand, it's not easy to go to Canada, from what people are telling me. It's just as hard as the United States.
I didn't know that.
So Hadi went to Portugal, and he cleaned up there, won straight firsts, beating a very good Nicholas VULLIOUD. I don't know if you saw that.
They both look good, but Nicholas' issue is the structure, right? He's looks like somebody hit him on the head a little bit with a hammer, so it I don't know, something's off. There's nothing really off with the structure, but he doesn't have tremendous flow. He's a little leg heavy and ass heavy. He got the funny.
Freaky
does he
muscle,
still have?
though. A lot of
He's got freaky muscle, which people are going to love. But he got, he's put it this way. He was freaky last year, not as freaky as this year. And I said, someone sent me a picture. And they said, have you ever seen so much muscle on a little short guy? And I said, well, it's not that impressive. And they're like, oh, you're such an idiot. And I said, well, listen, he's going to be competing in North Carolina. He's either going to win it and go straight into the Olympia and be top 3. This is a prediction, Dave. How close is this? Or he's going to North Carolina against Craig Richardson. And who's the other guy, 212? He's now open guy. He's really killer physique from Slovakia.
Oh, yeah, when he went up against, I know who you're talking about.
So I said he's either going to get first this weekend in North Carolina, and he's going to ride his hype train into the top 3 in the Olympia this year. This was last year. Or more than likely, he's going to run up against a Craig Richardson, and then this guy who beat Craig. Craig was second. This guy was first. I forget his name. Come on. You love him, Dave, this guy's physique.
Where
I'm stumping the jumbo at the North Carolina 212 last year.
Oh, no, I know who you're talking about.
Nick Bailey, whatever the guy's name was, third. I said, or Nick, he's going to end up third place because he's going to go up against people with a lot better flow, a lot better structure, and surprisingly, when they stand next to him, they're going to look like they have as much muscle as him, and that's exactly the way it went down. He got third, Craig got second, and deservingly, the guy who won the New York Pro last year. Oh, no. He got second at the New York Pro after that. The guy who won the North Carolina. I can't believe you can't
and then he
remember
moved.
his name.
He moved up to the Open. I know what his name is. I'm having like a mental moment right now.
Google it somewhere.
You're supposed to come up with these on me. Come on.
The listeners want to know who was the guy besides Craig Richardson who beat him last year. It was perfect because the kid had the Super X frame, the white guy from Slovenia. And he went up against Craig's crazy frame when Craig's in shape, and Craig was in tremendous condition
Milan
for that
Šadik,
show.
that's who it is.
Milan Šadik.
Yeah,
so it's Milan, then Craig, and then Nicholas. So the knock, the only knock on Nick is not the muscle, not the density, not the hardness. It's the way it all flows together. With the back's a little shallow for the legs, and the legs something's a little short. I think the arms maybe.
Right, but you remember he had some jimmied up muscle groups that
he had the skateboard shoulder last year. I'll never forget it.
It looks a lot better.
Skateboard, and he got the muffins in the shoulders.
He fell off the skateboard. That's right. That was the excuse, right? They said.
Yeah, he fell off the skateboard. but Chopi just ate him. I mean, Chopi looked phenomenal.
He's really good. It's a shame this guy can't go to the Olympia because of his visa issues. I'm really kind of pissed off about it, actually.
I mean, this was his 1,000% all-time best.
He's a freak. His waist is a little thick, but he's so big it doesn't even matter, really.
Yeah, no, he was more conditioned here. He was just than he's been, and he just, I think, it's always who you're standing next to too. But I think he was just better than he's been here.
This is like, I don't even know. This sounds like something like a story you would listen to like in the 1960s. Like the guy, can't get to the United States for whatever reason because he's in some communist nation, and and you look back 20 years later and you're like, why didn't they let this guy come to the U.S. to compete? He was a top level athlete in the world.
Well, the president had an issue with Obama, who signed
no, the
something
problem's
with the
with
Iranians.
Trump won't let him in. That's
I know, but
Isn't that is that the reason? Isn't Trump preventing like some of these?
Trump doesn't transcend sports.
Right. There should be a way to appeal this thing. It just doesn't make sense to me. That they shouldn't let a top tier athlete into this country. At least let him in. You don't have to let his family in if you don't want to, but let the guy come compete. What the hell? I mean, I can't even believe it. It's ridiculous. There should be a way to have some kind of a professional athlete exemption. Well, it should be like you're a dignitary. You know how they have the United Nations ambassadors who come here. It should be the same thing. They should have some kind of a special exception. I understand. Look, I don't want any terrorists in the country either, and I understand what Trump's trying to do. I don't necessarily agree with the way he's going about it, but I understand. So I support that because I don't want terrorists in the country. But you can't just. You got to have exceptions to the rule because there are certain people that are in a different class. They're not in the political arena. They're in the athletic arena.
Well, the whole thing is political.
I wonder if there was a guy who was a real top-notch movie
you
star
can
Iran, who they would
you can come from Saudi to the U.S.
Right.
All the hijackers in 2001 were from Saudi.
That's kind of weird. That's because our allies.
But Hadi Choopan, can't come, and I helped 212 guys, and you know what? I'm so terrible. Good, stay there. Better for me.
Right.
In other words, let him come for God's sakes.
It's ludicrous, really.
Why can't he come to compete?
You would think that the Olympia people, maybe you think Arnold would get involved at least.
Well, you just what. You would think someone.
You think if Arnold made a call to Trump that he couldn't make it happen? No,
because they hate each other, for God's sake.
Oh, that's right, they do. I forgot. Forgot that idea.
Trump just took the bobble doll. Didn't you just see Trump recently with the bobble doll?
Well, the AMI owns the Olympia. I'm sure I'm sure Trump has some kind of relationship with them, right?
Well, Trump was telling the AMI. Didn't you see that? Trump was telling AMI what headlines to write against Hillary's health when running into the election.
All right, so they have a relationship.
So I guess that would be considered a relationship. You can't write this stuff. It's so crazy.
No, they have a good relationship. So there you go, Chris.
And then they would do, and AMI would do the catch and kill stories on Trump's hooker girlfriends. They would pay they paid the Playboy girl to be a consultant for the magazine, and she told her, like, in exchange for never writing the story, that she had an affair with him and that's not even Stormy Daniels. That's the other girl.
Oh, is that how they got by the whole...
The Playboy Bunny.
Yeah,
the Playboy Bunny, whoever she is. You know?
Unbelievable. Never a dull moment, Chris. Never a dull moment.
No.
So anyway, look, you know, it was
so
exciting.
how do we get talking about that?
It's an exciting
how
event
good he
with Hadi
He looked
Choopan.
very good. He looked very good, and he's not going to be in the Olympia because all the hijackers were from Iran. Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Here's a good one for you. Let
him. One person.
Who wins on the Olympia stage? Hadi Choopan or Flex Lewis?
I'll say Hadi just to be totally controversial and piss off Flex Lewis.
Do you believe that he could challenge him? I mean, physique-wise?
Well, did he challenge him in Korea?
Some people would say he beat him, yeah.
Okay, has he improved here than in Korea?
Yeah, I'd have to say yes.
Yeah, So, I mean, my point being is this. He is beyond worthy to be on stage. Let me say this. Let me ask you this, Dave. Who's better, him or Askanani?
Oh, he destroys Ashkenani.
Destroys
him. Yeah.
End of story.
Well, I don't think Ashkenani ever challenged Flex Lewis though, so I don't. That's not necessarily a good analogy, but
I mean, where did Askanani beat Jose Raymond for that point last year or the year before? It's got no legs.
No.
He's got muffined up arms and delts.
I'll tell you what. I'm looking at some of the video of VULLIOUD, posing against.
He's phenomenal too.
He's really good. Yeah, I got to
very,
tell you,
very
this might have been one of the better 212s we had all year. Right?
Tremendous. The top two are tremendous.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little...
VULLIOUD is like a B version of... He's like the... Not the B, but not the A version of like a... He's like a Lee Priest type.
Yeah, I see it. I see
like
that
big
completely.
legs, big arms, torso's a little long, glutes a little bit too big. But I guess if you have striated glutes like his, it doesn't matter. And then the back is a little weak on the back double. Enough so with overblown legs that it looks a little funny.
Yeah, I agree. Very good analogy. As soon as you said that, I saw it. Great side chest pose, man. What? The two of them...
Well, I don't want you to think I'm a crackpot, Dave.
But I will say one thing. I think that VULLIOUD still has some issues with the delts. They're better than they were. They don't look ridiculous.
No, they still look mildly suspicious.
Well, there's scar tissue in there. I don't think that's
well,
ever coming out.
We should find out from all the internet warriors what they shot in there.
Unbelievable. All right, what else? So, let's see what else was going on at that show. They had a
bikini, I'm sure.
Yeah, they had a third. It's funny. They had Hadi, and then they had Nicholas, and then it was like guys we really didn't know, and they didn't look bad, but they obviously was not.
No, just Europe. I call them European peeled guys.
Angel Frost from Spain was third. Fourth was Zoran Kolevsky from Macedonia. Manuel Canadilis from Spain was fifth. These are guys, I saw the pictures, they look like amateurs compared to these other guys. Because let's face it, these two guys can definitely be top five at the Olympia, Unfortunately, Nicholas might be there, but unfortunately Hadi won't be there.
Yeah.
There was a men's physique in Portugal here this past weekend. Davide Mazzolari wins from Italy. And then there was a figure pro division. Zulerna Duran from Italy. Italy cleaned up here, huh? And there was a bikini. Lodomaila Nasanova from Ukraine won. So we're going to see a lot of people in the Olympia that we've never heard of. And in women's physique, there was only 4 women. This was a good chance for the women's physique women to get an Olympia qualification, and no one took advantage of it. Lenka Ferenkukova. Sounds like a tennis player. She wins from the Czech Republic. So congratulations. Oh, I see Tim Gardner was out there. Oh, this is a Tim Gardner show, I think it was. Tim Gardner's all over the place. I don't know how he does it. I got to be honest with you. I'd have a nervous breakdown.
He's a workaholic. Tim's a workaholic.
I'd be divorced and have a nervous breakdown if I did all these shows. I like to see these international shows, though. To me, it really it shows that there's interest around the world now. I think this is great. Before every show was in the United States. I like to see these international shows, even if the lineups are not as strong. If I was a competitor nowadays, Chris, I'll be honest with you. If I was competing nowadays and I was a pro, okay, I would go and do these international shows just to say one thing. I know it's more expensive, and but a lot of times you can negotiate deals and hook things up with sponsors. That I'll sit at your booth the whole weekend, because usually they have expos with these things, and I would go do these shows. I think you guys out there who are pros should take advantage of this, especially if you're good. This should have been, this should have been a show that more Americans were in. I think they missed the boat by not doing this show, especially the first year you do it, because this is when you get the biggest advantage, over these people, because no one shows up. But I would be doing traveling. I like to travel. I know it's a pain in the ass when you're dieting and stuff like that to have to get your stuff up together. But at that point, really, if you think about it, Chris, at the end of the diet, what do you really have to do at that point? If you're in shape, you're in shape. You pack your food and you go. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you, Gustavo Bedell? You got to get Gustavo on sometime, dude, and get the full story of Gustavo. It's in regards to traveling to shows.
Oh.
The first time he turned pro, he won. I don't know how he got his pro card. Maybe he won the Puerto Rico.
He probably won some South American championships, something like that.
Yeah, South American, and it's such a small world. I had gone up to Boston to go down. I went down to Boston to see Jay in a snowy, December. We went to see this contest, and Richard Jones won. Remember Richard Jones? He was a Sean Ray knockoff.
Of course,
Talk about if Nicholas, whatever this kid with the big legs is like Lee Priest, then what's the kid's name I just mentioned? Looked like the Sean Ray lookalike was Sean
Jones. Richard Jones.
Richard Jones.
We sound like two fucking insane people.
I know.
We can't think of it. Can't remember anything. We're like our parents.
Richard Jones wins a show, and lo and behold, I never knew who he beat at that show was Gustavo Bedell. I talked to Gustavo years later, and Gustavo could not believe I was at that show. I said, "Yeah, me and Jay went to see it. It was
Which
near
show
Jay's
was this
house.
Again?
It was like a show in New England by the guy. You used to guest post for the guy down in Watertown.
Oh, Jimmy Dakotas.
No. There was another one. There was another guy. He actually had a heart attack and died.
Oh, Greco.
Yeah, Lenny Greco.
Not Lenny Greco. Wasn't. It was something else.
Yeah, Jimmy Greco. So, anyways, years later, I meet with Gustavo, and I forgot about this time because I never really noticed him. And then once in 2000 on the tour, he got 18th place, and I was staring at this guy backstage. And I was like, God, this guy's really good. And he'd keep on getting 18th place. I'm thinking, why is this guy not placing? I was there with Jay over in Europe, and I was thinking, why is he not placing 10th or 7th or 9th? I mean, that's where he should have placed, and he'd be 18th. Well, years later, I told him that, and he said, well, you should have seen 2 years later. He said he got his pro card, and he called up Wayne DeMillier, and he said, I want to compete. Wayne gave him the list of the shows where they were, and they were 15 shows in 18 days in Europe.
Right, when they had the European tours.
Yeah. And Gustavo would take the caboose on the train because he had no money. He would literally take the train to every single stop. And I said, how'd you do on the tour? He said, I got dead last in every show. He said, but I was making an impact. I was getting some experience.
Right.
So
he had good stage presence. It's Gustavo. Right, he beat Ronnie in the challenge round twice.
No, he bamboozled him. He worked all year on which poses. Well, he was on a game show. That was a game show to
strategy. He strategized.
Like a $20,000 pyramid or something. A Family Feud. They would say,
he outthought everyone, evidently, because he won that challenge round.
Yep, easily 2 years in a row because he could beat someone on something.
Well, he could always beat Ronnie at the side tricep, and then he could beat the other guys in the other poses. So you only had to beat Mr. Olympia once, And he knew the pose he had to beat him in. So it was funny. It was what a crazy fight. I got to get Dorian on. Dorian used to judge that. I got to get Dorian to talk about
Well,
that
they had
challenge.
Mr. Olympias on there, so
Yeah.
he had like Samir and Zayn on the panel, and
Which is the worst thing, because these are all guys that I don't like that physique. I don't like his physique.
no. What someone always said is this: they said all the Mr. Olympias will vote for physiques that look just like them.
Yeah.
Samir would want the guy with balance, right? Zayn would want the vacuum in the small waist.
Yeah.
Haney would want someone with the front lat spread in the 3/4 back pose.
Sure.
Dorian would want total graininess.
Right.
Coleman would want a freak. Larry Scott would want someone with big biceps. Franco Colombo would want someone with a peeled chest and peeled most muscular.
Who's under 5'6", yeah.
Yeah, he definitely would be biased against like a Gunter.
He'd like Lee Priest.
Yeah, he'd like Lee Priest over Gunter all day long.
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't think we'll ever see that. Now we only have the People's Champ this year. It's funny. I had I don't know if you saw the part 1, but part 2 will be this week. I interviewed Dan Solomon. He was in Cape Coral, ironically enough.
Last time I saw Dan, he says, "Oh, you still doing that radio show?" And I said, "Yeah, we're on we're number 1 in our time slot, Dan. You used to be number 1."
Dan,
when Blackman used to pay you $85,000 an episode.
Yeah, we were talking about that. How Dan's like, I used to have I stopped the radio show. I said, yeah, because Blackman stopped competing with me. I said, I got you those years.
Here's how Dan could get a raise in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Dave offered me.
Dave offered me $100,000 a month. I give you 140.
The true story, though. You know what? Dan came to me and wanted to. He must.
I remember.
He was the ultimate negotiator. And I was. You know what? I was just thinking about starting up Muscle in the morning. That was my original brainchild. And I said, you know what?
That was in Miami, Dave. He came to you.
I said, Dan, you know what?
I didn't trust Dan then, but go ahead.
I don't even trust Dan now. But no, I'm just kidding. Dan has nothing to lose now. But back then, I didn't trust him and he, by his own admission, was always trying to sabotage. To get the scoop on everyone. And I said, you know what, Dan? If you do the radio show on my RxMuscle, channel, I said, I also want you to do part of your deal with me is going to be doing a show that I have created called Muscle in the Morning. It had never been out yet. We're gonna build you a little studio in your house, a little backdrop in your house, and you're gonna record it. You'll send the footage every day to my video guy, and we're gonna edit together because I figured he'd be good at that. And that's my original intention, was him to do Muscle in the Morning. And so when he really was just getting me to give him a bid so that then he can tell Blackman I'm willing to pay this, and then Blackman would outbid it. And because he didn't really want to work back then.
Yeah, it's like when in real estate you go look at something, they said, we got a contract coming in. They're like, oh, sure, I'm sure you do. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how that happened. And then I just started Muscle in the Morning, and I said, fuck it, I'll just do it myself. And that's how it started. So thank you, Dan, for pushing me to do Muscle in the Morning, and I'm sure you'll thank me for all the money you put in your pocket for those, whatever it was, 2-3 years that Blackman paid you for doing nothing, basically. We gotta have a radio show. I'm gonna have a radio show.
Yeah, because he got excited about Howard Stern, Blackman, right?
No, he was excited that he didn't have a radio show, and he didn't want me to get both radio shows. Not that it would have mattered. I don't even know why at the time I thought it was important, but I thought it was important at the time. And it was probably just to take it away from Blackman, but it was stupid. I'm glad I didn't do it. I'm glad I didn't wind up having to pay Dan all that money. Although I think we would have got sponsors at the time if I had brought Dan on, but who knows? Back to the pro schedule this past weekend. Linda Murray had a pro show in Norfolk, Virginia, and she had a men's physique show won by Greg Brandt. Congratulations. And the pro bikini was won by Ashley Janelle in Colorado. And Jacqueline Fuchs won the women's bodybuilding. They have a lot of women's bodybuilding. They have an awful lot of women's bodybuilding pro shows for a division that doesn't exist anymore, right? It doesn't even have an Olympia division. Tara Siltzer was second, and Bonnie Pappas Switzer, whatever her last name is now, is third. So, the Wings of Strength people are doing great. They're freaking, their shows are killing it. They got huge lineups of people. They're going to have their World Championships, the Rising Phoenix, coming up in September, giving away more prize money than all the women's divisions at the Olympia. Yeah. So, who's better than them? Women's bodybuilding is doing great. I would do women's bodybuilding now if I was a women's physique competitor. By the way, did you hear Juliana Malacarni retired?
No, I didn't know.
She won't be doing the Olympia. Big news.
Yeah, that actually is big news.
I wonder why. I wonder if it's because I gotta go to the show. I hate speculating because you know what? I'm gonna speculate now, and she's gonna come on the show and say, no, this is the reason. I want to have a family or something like that.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that.
I mean, I know she would like to have one. I don't know if that's the reason. I gotta reach out to her.
Well, just have her come over and put your son to bed so that you can do the radio show earlier.
I wonder if it had anything to do with the rise of the Shanique Grant star on the horizon after winning the Arnold. She's going to be a tough battle. I would have liked to seen them battle it out, wouldn't you?
I would say, well, you know what? I would. Shanique Grant is off the hook, but Juliana Malcarney is as well, and she's. If she puts her mind to something, you know her. She's certifiably crazy in a good way.
Yeah, I'd like.
But
to see...
but I'm sure Shanique is as well. Certifiably crazy. They take it very, very serious. Yeah. It'd be a battle of the ages.
Sure.
It'd be like a Jay versus Ronnie type thing.
Yeah, but we're not going to see it obviously because she's not doing the show. I'd like to see Candice Lewis cross over from figure into women's physique.
Last show, man, she was. Talk about being off the hook. She's so dangerous, it's ridiculous.
I think she can challenge Shanique. I think Shanique's a little bigger now, but I think that she can challenge her for sure.
I would
crazy to think about that. I'd love to see her hit a couple poses against Shanique backstage, especially if they both win the Olympia. That would be crazy. All right, so anyway, the Lenda, congratulations on this year pro show. It seems to be growing every year. They keep adding new divisions. And it's great. It's great that they have a way for former competitors to actually make a living, as promoters. And the shows have tremendous amounts of competitors in them. Obviously, I know the Lenda show had an amateur division that probably was packed to the hilt. So great job, great job. Let's see what else I have in my little list of stuff to talk about. What's going on with this Steve Laureus? Let's just remind people with the whole Steve Laureus story. Steve Laureus originally worked with you. He claims for 3 weeks. You claim for 6 weeks. Then we saw him go over to my friend Justin there in New York, who he claims he went over there because Justin lives local to him. And we saw Laureus, and Laureus has been talked about by an enormous amount of people as being like the heir apparent to the classic physique Olympia throne. He's got the small waist, the vacuum, the whole thing. He wins Pittsburgh pretty easily, or I would say easily, but by a point. But go ahead. Some people would say easily, but other people, Divine Wilson would question that.
Well, I mean, the judges would question it. He won by a point.
Yeah, and the following or 2 weeks later, he instead of doing New York against Divine Wilson again, who was second in Pittsburgh. He decides to do the 212 division because a friend of his is doing the Open, or is doing the Classic physique. That was the story, at least. And you predicted on the show that he was going to get destroyed at 212.
I must take my predictions back to Phil Heath. Shouldn't have left Muscle Tech. Well, go ahead.
You said he will be destroyed because he couldn't stand next to these 212 guys, and it turns out you were right. He was like out of the top 10.
I said that, and I said his friend would be destroyed in the who he wasn't competing against in his division.
Yeah, Amit didn't do well, but Amit did do well in that other show.
In a very weak class, dude. So I mean, true. That New York Pro did not have. New York Pro did not have Reagan, Divine, and what names? My goodness, and the freak from Germany, the classic. Who was the guy from Germany? Look, I can't remember anyone's name.
Wasn't Divine in New York Pro? I thought he was in New York.
Yes, so my point was, I said that lineup, which Amit was in, was radically different than, the top three in New York, which was like, those three guys could win.
Right. Amit just took second behind, what's his name? Vissers. Wesley Vissers.
My God, he's got weaknesses from head to toe.
Yeah, he's not the greatest either. But
I mean,
he's got a great look.
I mean, Amit arguably could have won that show.
Yeah, true. So let's get back to Steve Laureus. So Steve Laureus, then he disappeared, and no one heard from him. And now he pops up, and he's all of a sudden Neil Hill is training him, And
That's an Aaron special, dude. I can predict
of course
everything.
it is. Oh, of course it is, because he's a
See, I
red
predicted him
flag
before you
winner.
even. How's that?
But he seems to be. I guess Justin, who's his former coach, is upset. Well, not upset, but he's. I guess he's.
Well, because he banked on him, dude.
Well, I think. Yeah, but you know what? I think he seems to be giving all the credit to Neil Hill, who's a great trainer, by the way. But I just Neil hasn't worked with this guy for any shows yet.
Credit for what?
As like the greatest coach of all time, but it's let's face it, the guy did win Pittsburgh, with Justin helping him. So
True.
We never heard any. So you did predict that he was not. He might have had a few screws loose. I don't know.
Well, I predicted that. I predicted immediately off. Did I not predict, Dave, that he would leave Justin in a heartbeat?
You did predict it.
I didn't say it on the show just because it probably wasn't the place yet.
Why do these guys switch coaches so frequently? How could it be the coach? How could the coach be that bad if he won the Pittsburgh Pro Show?
First of all, a lot of these. Here's what happens. You quote coach someone, and a lot of these guys talk to each other, right? Mm-hmm. And then a lot of these other coaches, whoever these are, I don't mean everybody, but a lot of quote these other coaches follow them on Instagram and then jerk them off all day long.
Right, but that's not Neil Hill's style.
No, I know, but that's why I said that's an Aaron special right there.
Okay, I got you.
So I mean, Aaron's panicky over there that he's paying Steve Laureus and he's not in the Olympia.
Right. Well, he isn't. Oh, he's not. Oh, he's not doing the Olympia, or is he doing the Olympia?
Of course, he's not doing the Olympia. Not yet, at least. Yeah. But he wasn't. I don't know.
Well, he had said he wasn't doing it, but maybe with Neil.
Well, then he's definitely not doing it because talk about a head case. I mean, you either are or you're not.
Right. We'll find out, I guess.
So what was the question, and I'll answer it.
Why do guys keep leaving coaches, especially when they have good results with them? You've had guys leave you too, and I've had people leave me too, and they were winning shows with us.
I mean, I've had, and it don't bother me.
No, I know it doesn't bother me either. But is it like they think the grass is greener someplace else? They're missing out on something. What's going on?
That's what I'm saying. At first, they're followed by other coaches on their Instagram who Reagan Grimes will post up a picture, and Justin is there to comment on every picture he posts. It's called trolling the guy. So if God forbid the guy doesn't win a show, they're there to say, if you need any help.
Gotcha.
And they'll do it like this because people are fucking certifiably nuts after they don't win a show.
You're right.
And they'll do this. Your pecs could have been a little fuller. Or they'll do this, if you were just a little drier and a little fuller. Or they'll say, look at so-and-so that I coach. If you had that condition, it'd be like me saying, look at, Rodin's legs. I'll give you a leg workout. I don't even know what the hell he does for legs, and I don't care. They look good. Just get the fat and water off them. It's like me saying, well, look what I did for Eduardo Correa's condition.
Right.
I mean, that's what people do. It's a sale. It's just so that's what people are crazy after shows, and they're susceptible to any advice. And I know that, Dave, because well-known people email me all the time with other coaches after shows, and they say, "What do you think?" I said, "I think you look great." Yeah, because it's the worst time to give. It's totally disingenuous to give advice to somebody coming off a loss after a show because they're just searching, grasping at straws. God, Blackman should have paid us to do the show instead of Dan Solomon. This show's better than any one of Dan's.
So, getting back to... I'm glad you mentioned Dan. Getting back to Dan.
So it's true.
Getting back to Dan. So Dan was in...
No, we're talking about Steve. What do you mean?
Well, forget Steve. You already gave me the answer to the question. Yeah. I forgot I was originally talking about Dan Solomon, though. So Dan Solomon was in town in Cape Coral. He's from Florida, obviously. He's from the other coast. And he was over. He's like, Dave, I'm going to be in Cape Coral. Is that where you live? I said, yeah, I live in Cape Coral. He's like, I'm going to come by. I said, all right. So I said, come by. We'll do an interview. So I got him, came by the studio, met my kids, whatever, and we were bullshitting. And I'm like, yeah, let's go into the studio and let's record something. We recorded an hour. So we did 2 parts. And we talked about, we talked about everything, but we talked about the People's Champ, award that they're going to be doing and what his thoughts on it were. And we talked about, would Kai Green come back to compete and why he should come back and compete. The timing is right now, and, it would be great for the sport and great for the show. And we talked about some other controversy. I talked about why, how ridiculous, and he agreed with me, which is amazing, how ridiculous these exclusive contracts they still have are, with like Phil Heath can't come on my show or can't go on his show or whatever it is because, they got some kind of like exclusivity that they don't even use, anymore. It's outlived its purpose. In other words, there's no magazines anymore. There's no even Flex magazine anymore. So I don't know why they won't let Phil, go on other shows and promote the Olympia. I think that, and I even brought up the point, and Dan agreed with me, I believe that Phil would be a more liked champion.
Oh, absolutely.
If he was able, because he's actually if you watch an interview with him, I've seen interviews on other talk shows with him, and the guy's pretty entertaining. You might not, like his physique, or you might not like his attitude, but he's actually an entertaining. He's got very insightful. He's well spoken.
Well, I don't know if he's entertaining, but I know this. He's won the Olympia a lot of times. And for every person, I know he's got this reputation that people don't like him, but he's got a massive fan base.
But the reason why people don't like him is they don't really know him. Imagine if I'm not just
that's
saying he could be anyone.
That's part of it, David. I'm agreeing with you. If you can only do one interview a year, and you say one thing that's controversial, people are going to say, "What an idiot! He said this." Well, everyone says something, quote, stupid. I do all the time.
Who's interviewed him and actually asked him about his upbringing and how he, all we know is he shot a few fucking baskets at the University of Colorado there and played basketball. That's the only thing I know about him, really.
Yeah.
I want to know, everything about him. And so, it's kind of foolish for them not to let their Mr. Olympia, the guy who represents our sport, the guy who, is in the social media world, dilly-dallying around there because he can't actually go on anyone's show and actually tell people what he's actually thinking inside. He winds up making posts on Instagram and then people take it the wrong way. And then you need to sit down and be able to explain yourself to people. It's like, you ever get into a texting thing with clients and they get insulted because they don't really pick up your tone. You might be being sarcastic, maybe you're just being short with them because your kids are driving you crazy. Instead of just picking the freaking phone up and calling you up on the phone and talking to you, which usually completely negates everything that's been done via text. Now they're like, oh, I didn't know you. Oh, I thought you were mad at me. So it's the same way. Social media can be taken the wrong way because you can't hear the person speaking and you can't tell if someone's being genuine or not. So I just said, Dan, I can't believe that they're still playing this card.
Yeah.
These.
What did he say?
He's like, you're right. It doesn't really serve. He's Mr. Politically Correct, but he agreed. He did agree with me. He did agree with me that it doesn't serve its purpose anymore. It did when there was magazines. I understand because the magazines wanted to have the scoop. They wanted to get the edge on people. I want to sell more copies of MD because I have so and so in my magazine with an exclusive interview versus Flex magazine per se, and vice versa. That makes sense because that's when people read magazines. It was important to have cover lines.
Yeah.
But no one reads magazines anymore, and that's not relevant anymore. So why any company would even spend money on trying to pay someone to be exclusive to them is the biggest waste of money in today's.
So he's wrapped up with who? Flex?
No, he's wrapped up with no one. He's doing the Amazon.com broadcast this year again.
No, I mean Phil.
Oh, Phil. Yeah, I guess he's Flex AMI. I guess he's got a contract with them. Which is fine because they own the Olympia and he's Mr. Olympia. I understand that, but they're not using him. So let him.
But they don't care to use him because
right.
If they
But
did,
take
they
your
would.
take your champion, put a freaking T-shirt on him that says Mr. Olympia AMI Flex Mag, whatever you want to put on him.
I'll tell you
and
what.
Send him around the country.
You want look when it comes to Dave Palumbo, that's never going to happen because you'll get
No, but I'm not. In other words, I'm not scooping anyone. It's going to promote. The
Olympia.
But
unfortunately, you would be scooping because you would
send
have
him
a
to
killer.
MD. Let Ron interview him too, and then send him over to whoever else wants to interview him. This is, Dorian Yates made the rounds. He's how popular he is from doing all these interviews with all these different media organizations now.
Oh.
It's the biggest mistake I think that's out there. It's an antiquated system. It worked. Like I said, I think it was great. and smart. I worked for MD. We were trying to scoff up everyone because it made sense back then, but not in today's social media, world. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense anymore. And I just think that it's killing Phil Heath's brand. I think it's killing a lot of guys' brands, because they can't get on. Dexter is one of the most. See, Dexter's smart. Dexter goes on his own Instagram and does his own videos. Even though he's exclusive to AMI, he can do whatever he wants on his own page, which is also ludicrous because here you are, they want exclusivity on you, but you can go do your own stuff. These guys hire their own video guys and they start their own channels, which is fine. But in order to promote your own stuff, you need to go on other channels that are popular as well. So that's just my suggestion. Like I said, it doesn't matter to me. Dan and I did a very good interview in the sense that we talked about a lot of controversial subjects, and we gave a lot of strong opinions. And I think the first part was well received. I think people will even like the second part better because I started getting animated. I started getting into the whole interview thing. At first, I was just interviewing him, and then it became more of a discussion between him and I as to what our opinions are on everything. And I told him, I said, look, I said I had to take an approach to how I covered my journalism. And my approach is different than yours is. And I said, you know what the funny thing, Dan, is? You could interview Kai Green. I can interview Kai Green. You can interview Phil Heath. I can interview Phil Heath. They'd be two separate interviews. Completely different.
That's a great point. That's
right?
a great point.
And they would both be just as entertaining.
It's a great point. And you've told me yourself, in fact, when I said, oh, Dave, that was a great interview. And you've said, you got to see the interview with so-and-so did with him.
Yeah. True.
And I disagree with you. I said, no, yours is the best.
No, you know what it is? Because and Dan,
you've told me. You said, no, go see so-and-so's interview with him because it's a totally different perspective than mine.
Right. And you have to take that as an interview because if I see there's 5 interviews out there on a person, most of them are all the same. I don't want to do the same interview as everyone else, so I'm gonna be like, all right, well, I got to take a different angle. That's why when I interviewed Dorian, I waited for everyone else to interview him first so that I wouldn't ask the same questions essentially. And then I asked him my set of questions. I said, Dan's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, Dan, you're not going to ask controversial questions if you get Phil Heath on. You're going to ask him questions relevant to what's going on in his life and in the world in terms of his bodybuilding world. That's what you are. I said you're like Larry King. You ask the questions that they're not super controversial.
That's a very good point.
But they're what people want to hear about. I said that's a gift that you have. You know how to ask questions that people want to know the answers to. I ask questions that people never thought of necessarily, or maybe did think of and thought no one would ask. That's my approach I take, and because that's also interesting. It's interesting in a different way. It puts the person in a different perspective. It's not them just talking about themselves; it's them having to think about themselves and give answers because it's what makes them tick. And I think that's what also people want. I want to know what makes Phil Heath tick. Why is he so successful?
That is absolutely 100% the most important part.
Right, but it's also interesting to know how he came up and the shows he won. You want to know everything about the guy, Kai Green, same thing. We've heard all the Kai Green. We know Kai Green's contest, history already. We know what shows he's won already. But what makes Kai Green tick? Remember when he did that Arnold Classic that he won? I don't know if it was 09 or 010, and he fell off the treadmill. He was so lethargic. Yeah. Remember that? He actually fell off the treadmill, and everyone's like, "Oh, Kai is not going to make it to the show." And I want to know what happened. No one ever asked him. That's a question I would ask if I had Kai on. What the hell happened? That's when he was working with Oscar. Remember, there was so much drama around that whole prep, and he looked great. He made it to the stage and he looked great. I want to know what was going on behind the scenes. There was another one, if you remember. Remember when he did that Olympia? He was him and Oscar sequestered themselves for 6 weeks in Vegas. You remember?
Oh yeah, we speculated for the full 6 weeks. We said we were speculated on the ambient temperature changes with humidity, and it was fun.
Right, and you remember that?
And wait a minute, wait.
Dave
you asked me, Dave. I remember that prediction. You said, "What do you think?" I said, "It's going to be a disaster, Dave."
You were right.
You know why I know that?
Why?
I said, because I saw that video of you made for MD Dave when you went, and I said only Rocky can go to Russia and win, and train with in the snowstorms and in the logs and stuff.
Right.
But you know what? Home is where your heart is, or whatever that saying is, and you have to be. Most people especially artists, and Kai is an artist, need to be in their environment. And I predicted that, and I predicted it for every single week. I said, the pictures were put out, posts and videos. I said, it's not going to end well at all.
Poor Mike Pusinella. Mike Pusinella was sent there to videotape that whole 6 weeks in Vegas. He sent Muscle Med sent him there. They paid for the whole thing, and he couldn't get Kai out of the hotel room. Kai would be in this hotel. There was like a suite they were staying in, and there was like the main room, and then there was the bedroom. And Kai was in the back bedroom, and Mike Pusinella, he all day long he was in the regular room, the main room with Oscar, because Oscar was there in the room with them too. Oscar was cooking food like Oscar was cooking like he was an old Italian grandma all day long for Kai. And Mike's like, is Kai coming out? It's been like 6 hours already. Doesn't he have to go train? Yeah, well, he might come out. He might come out in a couple hours. And so Mike was there all day filming like Oscar and the cooking and like people coming in and out of the place. But no one saw Kai Green for like at all. We don't even know what Kai was. I want to know what Kai was fucking doing in that back room for so long. And what happened?
Yeah.
Kai, don't you want to know?
Well, he guest posed for someone I know. And the person had the gym, and it was like, oh, Kai Green's coming to the gym. Kai Green. And so Kai said, I'm going to go into the locker room and come out. He went into the locker room. He didn't say he was going into the locker room. He went into the locker room, and it was midnight, and they're waiting for him, like the owner and his friend, to come out. And it was like 1:30 when he finally came out in the morning. They didn't know if, it was a long trip and it was overseas, and they didn't know if he had fallen asleep, but they didn't want to go in and disturb him, you know what I mean? But the oddity, I said, why didn't you guys just go in to check on him? Maybe he'd fallen asleep. They're like, well, it's Kai, and you know what? If Kai threw his hat into this year's Olympia,
right?
I mean, talk about Olympia hype up.
That's what Dan and I were talking about. It would be crazy, right?
It would be crazy.
Yeah.
And
we were also saying about how how much time does the guy have really left to do this, and this might be the year to do it. Who knows? Big deal. Who cares if you don't win? Kai can't lose if he does the show and he comes in second or third. It doesn't matter. He'll still be the most popular person there.
Well, the fans would vote him number one for sure because they didn't have a fan thing.
Absolutely.
And he'd love that, and he'd say, you know what Kai would say?
Well,
he'd say it's harder to win the fans' vote. It's easy. It's easier to win the judges' vote because you're the perennial winner, and the same judges are judging you year after year, and it's the garnering the support.
Look, let's say he did the show and he came in second or third, okay, and he deserved it, okay. Let's say. Who cares?
Why he could win this year, Dave?
Who cares? He still would be the most popular guy there. Period. End of story. No one would care about anyone else.
He could win this year because the lineups are always. It's important who you're standing next to, and I know it's important about Phil, but he could. If he looked anything like what he's capable of looking like, he could win because he's got the cross-threaded quads, which means he'd have the best quads up there. They'd be, not as big as Ramy's, but they would just be cross-threaded. Very few people in that lineup have deep cross-threaded quads.
Right.
Technically, he could demolish the ab shot against Phil and Ramy, right? I'm not even mentioning Bonac. He could win the back double, arguably, although I should walk that one back. Phil's been able to.
Phil's money shot, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. But, you never know. And I agree with you. I think there's only a benefit from him doing the show.
Well, I agree.
If I was the Olympia people, I'd just pay him to do the show. And they probably already offered him to do it anyway, and they denied it.
Aaron told me he offered him money to do the show, and he wouldn't take it. A lot, too.
Then he needs to try it one more time.
Enough. Aaron offered him enough that you would do the show. if he offered you that money.
Aaron, my number is 20757.
Oh my god! So yeah, I thought Aaron had a big announcement. He was going to sign a big name, and I thought it was going to be Kai, and I was wrong. It was actually Brian Shaw signed the world's strongest man, Brian Shaw.
It's not that big, but go ahead.
I guess he figured he's the biggest guy because he's 450 pounds. But anyway, on another note, I'm going to deviate from bodybuilding a little bit and go to muscle science.
Say go to my fire.
Yeah, muscle science. So I don't know if you've seen this new article that just came out. It was in another language. I put it in Google Translate. One of my followers sent it to me. They found that blood bear, the bear from Bloods, especially when they're hibernating in the winter, can make you grow more muscle. Did you know that?
Blood?
The blood from bears. Like in other words, if you take the blood out of these bears, they're finding that there's some protein in there, some kind of factor that can actually prevent muscle weakness in older people. And can build muscle. Of course, they apply for weakness in older people and weightless astronauts, but let's face it, the athletes are going to only want to use it. They haven't really isolated what it is yet, but they're trying to figure it out. Pretty interesting, right? Because they find, why do these bears, when they hibernate in the winter, they don't lose any muscle? Think about it. They go the whole winter, they don't eat anything. They don't lose 1 gram of muscle.
Because they're bears.
But there's something that's preserving the muscles, what I'm saying. So they're trying to figure out what it is.
So should I have my cousin who's selling grass-fed cows start raising Maine black bears?
There you go. That'll be the newest thing. Everyone's got to find a way to cheat. You know that. Their muscle cells evidently swell in size. Like they get bigger. And I think that's what makes them more anabolic. Because we know for a fact that volumized muscle cells tend to be more anabolic, and just like dehydrated muscle cells tend to be more catabolic. So, be great. Imagine that. If they can come up with a pill or something like that that contains this factor in their blood. It's only produced in the winter, by the way. If you take a bear when it wakes up from hibernation, and it's eating normally, it doesn't have that in there. So it's adaptive. It's something that helps them get through the hibernation. I'm sure someone will exploit that. It'll be on one of these peptide sites like next week. They'll have like the bear factor #1 or something like that they'll call it. Unbelievable. So, I like these things.
You see my condo almost burnt down, huh?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that he was trying to find Jews, the guy, and burn the Jews, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Chris has a condo in Miami. He sends me this article about this raving lunatic, 70-something-year-old, was trying to burn down the condo because he thought there were Jews in there. Is that what he was trying to do? Kill Jews?
Yeah, he lived there. And he poured gasoline down...
Oh, he lived there, too?
Yeah, he lived there. And he poured gasoline down the trash chutes.
Oh, really? Oh, he really knew what he was doing.
He had poured 2 out of another... I think he had 26 other containers of gasoline.
Wow. How come they don't get him out of the country? He sounds like a terrorist to me.
Well, he's going to try to... He's so crazy he thinks he's going to qualify in the 212 Olympia.
Either that or he belongs where my dad is. 'Cause my dad tried to light his house on fire, too, because he thought he was trying to warm up the house.
But they arrested him, charged him with attempted arson and attempted murder.
Wow. Was he of sane mind, or was he out of his lunatic? Like, was he, demented?
I don't know. He was in his mid-70s. Crazy though, right?
He probably has dementia. Dementia is a very sad thing. I went and saw my father today. He obviously, I told you this. I think I mentioned on the show. He broke his femur in 4 places. They had to redo that. They had to put his leg back together, and he had to redo that hip replacement he had on that side done 25 years ago. And he's not doing well. He's got a touch of pneumonia. When old people start falling, and they're they have mental, memory issues, it doesn't usually bode well for him. My dad's at the stage where he's like, I'm done. I'm like, what do you mean you're done? He's like, I'm done. Because I said, you're done with life, or you're done with because you're pissed off that you're in pain? No, life. I said, so when people give up like that, that's it. It's over. Unfortunately. So I don't know what's going on with my dad. My sister's flying down here this coming weekend, so I don't know how long. I know everyone always asks about my dad, so I don't know if my dad's going to make it past this one. I don't think he wants to anymore. I tried to give him a little pep talk, but also he's very confused because whenever you get my dad was under anesthesia for 6 hours on this surgery, so he's definitely whacked from that, and he's actually pleasant in the hospital, which is a bad sign also. Everyone's like, yeah, Dad, we love you, Dad. He's so pleasant. I said, that's not a good sign. I said when he starts cursing you out and yelling at people, let me know, because that's a good sign that my dad's back. So he could use. Maybe I got to get him some bear blood. I got to go find some. Anyone who knows, I know we'll have one of our viewers out there or listeners probably has brown bears. Unfortunately, they're not going into hibernation right now. My dad's gonna have to make it to the winter. I can take some bear blood and transfuse it into him. His iron was low anyway, so he probably could use a blood transfusion. It's terrible getting old. It is. It's a little depressing, but it happens to the best of us, I guess. Right, Chris?
Well, some people don't make it to the road.
True. I told my dad that too. I said, Dad, you've overcome a lot already. I said, there's no reason why you can't keep going. He's like, I don't want to. You know what? When I hear that, I don't even get sad. I kind of like, you know what? Yeah, maybe he's right. Well, it's about quality of life, isn't it? After a while.
Well, it's always about quality of life, really, right?
I mean, the only reason my dad is really living at this point is to watch his grandkids grow old and get a little older, so they can interact with him. And I don't know. I think he's better off in another place. I don't want to see him suffer. It's hard to say. Terrible to say it about a father. It's about a parent. To admit that maybe the living life is not as good as going to the next realm. But I don't want to see my dad suffer. If he's suffering and he's not happy, I don't want him. To. I don't want. In other words, a lot of people try to save people because they can't. In other words, it's bothering them. They don't want to lose They don't want the parent to die because it's going to bother them. But if that's what your parent really wants, if my dad is done and he's given up and he's like, all right, you know what, I'm good. I lived enough life. I want to move on to my next agenda, whatever that is. I'm not against it. I want him to be happy. I don't want him to suffer. And, for people like your dad or my dad, losing their memories is worse than physically handicapping them, because that's their whole life was based on their mind, and the things that they said and the things they did, it's terrible when you have no control of that anymore.
Totally. I mean, was it you who mentioned or made the comparison with dementia? In terms of, like sometimes you ever fall asleep and you wake up and you're like, what you're just like totally lost where you are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Imagine being like that, 24/7.
Yeah, no, it's not a good, pleasant way to live your life. So, but like you said, a lot of people don't make it. I mean, is it worse to die at 40? You know what I mean? I think that would be worse. So look, as long as my father can kind of drift off to the other world in a very peaceful way, I think that's the best way to go. That's how I'd want to go. I don't want to be pathetic. And my dad's not pathetic yet, but I don't want him to get to that point. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I'll keep you guys updated. The World Health Organization, Chris, officially declared bacon as harmful as cigarettes. Did you read this? This was last week.
That's insane, dude. They should be shot.
They're saying, and look, I've said this also too for a while, that processed meats are very carcinogenic to humans. I
know, we've known that for like years that they're carcinogenic, but for God's sakes, really, you know what? How about this? It's what would you see a 10-year-old on a corner eating a BLT sandwich or smoking a pack of Marlboros. Which one are you going to tell him is worse for him? I mean, these people are just retarded.
But you know what?
Sorry, insulting retarded people, but I needed something. They're just stupid. I mean, really?
They say this is the article. They say they
Who's
found.
they?
The World Health Organization claimed that they found sufficient evidence in humans that the consumption of processed meat calories causes colorectal cancer. Meat consists of multiple components such as heme iron, and meat can also contain chemicals that form during meat processing or cooking. For instance, carcinogenic chemicals that form during meat processing include N-nitroso compounds and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Cooking of red meat or processed meat also produces heterocyclic aromatic amines, as well as other chemicals, including polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are also found in other foods and in air pollution. Some of these chemicals are known as suspected carcinogens. But despite this knowledge, it is not yet fully understood how cancer risk is increased by red meats or processed meats. So, I mean, if I didn't go to medical school, I probably couldn't have pronounced all those terms. Now, they actually have a chart. This is really funny, Chris. I love when they do this. They probably spent $10 million on this study. They have a chart on bacon's cancer risk, how much bacon you could eat to raise your colorectal cancer. All right, so if you eat 2 strips of bacon per day, you only increase your risk 5.9%. However, if you eat 10 strips of bacon per day, you increase your percentage of your chance of colorectal cancer by 9.5%. Now, Aaron, I know that you have Aaron Singer eats a lot of bacon. I've watched him at breakfast, before. You better cut back your 10 strips to your 2 strips, or maybe no strips. I don't eat bacon, so I'm not worried, to be honest with you. But cured meats are not good for you. We know that. It's sad. Like you said, if you have a hot dog once in a while, it's not a big deal. But if you're eating it every single day, I guess it could definitely cause problems, I think not using a fiber supplement is going to increase your risk of colorectal cancer a lot more than eating a couple strips of bacon every day. But they claim it does.
Yeah. Well, how does 2 pieces of bacon compare to 2 bar rolls a day?
I don't know. That's the chart I want to see. You're right. That's the chart.
And who are the guinea pigs they used? I mean, it's just. It's all.
You know what the problem is? They do these retrospective studies, and they look at all the people who got colorectal cancer, and they say, all right, well, what did you eat? What was your diet? Look, I can't remember what I ate this morning for breakfast. I don't know how these people come up with what they ate for fucking 25 years, unless they're just eating the same thing every day. I eat 2 eggs and 2 pieces of bacon every morning. After I read the article, all of a sudden I got this craving for bacon. I'm like, I want to fucking eat bacon all of a sudden. I don't know why. I never eaten a piece of bacon in 20 years.
Well, you gotta kill yourself.
All of a sudden, I have a craving for bacon now. I want to go make some bacon. I'm going to go to IHOP after this show at 3 in the morning and go get some bacon. So, well, as long as my dad is ready to leave this mortal plane, maybe I should have him eat a couple pieces of bacon. He might as well, right? Get as much bacon in as possible.
Did your father smoke?
He did smoke for many years.
I thought he was a smoker.
He stopped though. He hasn't smoked for 20 years, but he smoked for a long time. He smoked a pipe. He smoked cigarettes. He stopped the cigarettes. He started again.
Imagine him smoking the pipe.
Yeah, my dad had that whole. Yeah, because he had to.
But he considered not smoking, probably.
Yeah, right. He claims he doesn't inhale that. I said, you're lucky you didn't get mouth cancer. I said, you destroyed your gums from it, but I said you're lucky you didn't get. My dad has got a very good constitution because he obviously has endured a lot of health issues over the years. But Father Time beats us all. That's the bottom line.
Time is longer than twine.
Yeah. His father lived to 92, but his father never smoked or drank. So, you definitely can get an extra 5 or 6 years out of yourself if you don't do that.
It goes back to quality again.
Yeah, you're right. It's all quality of life. That's what it all comes down to. I always said, who cares if you live longer, but if you're miserable and you feel terrible while you're living longer, it's maybe not a good idea. But that's why I always said I want to live long. I want to live to be old, but I want to be functional. That's the key. You want to be functional.
Yeah.
90 would be great as long as I'm functional to 90. 100 would be better if I'm functional to 100. If I'm disabled, then it's not worth living.
You got to keep. You got to keep your mind busy all the time.
Believe me.
You got to keep it all. You got to keep it busy all the time.
You got plenty going on. Not that anyone cares, but I produced a very rare boa constrictor, Chris. One of the only people to do it in the world. I think I might be the first person in the entire world to produce this. It's called a crystal boa. It was a combination of these two babies I bought, and I produced a bunch of them too. And so I am now on the boa constrictor breeding. I guess you could say rankings. I've moved up the rankings quite a bit recently with the production of this animal that I produced.
The real rankings, because your radio show is ranked. What was it, 30th or something?
Yeah, I think we're the last radio show. But so I just it was to me that was like getting your pro card. You know, I got my pro card in reptile breeding. The crazy things we do. You know, it's funny though. I always tell people though, it's very important to have hobbies outside of bodybuilding. You know, bodybuilding is my source of income and my job, which I love, which is good because it's always nice to love your job. But then you have to have a hobby, and I would say, you know, breeding reptiles is my hobby. You know, even though it could become a good source of income in the future, but it's not right now. And so I enjoy doing it. You know, Chris loves bodybuilding too, and I know your real estate is it's really your source of income, but you also love it, and that's important because you have two different passions. So if something goes wrong in one, you got the other to kind of fall back on. If someone burns down your house because they think you're a Jew, you know, you can at least go up through the radio show and kind of, you know, get your all your depression and frustrations out, right?
No.
You got the craziest fucking people who live in your buildings. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's I agree with you. You know, there's never a dull moment.
What happens if like someone who lives there burns the building down? How does that work with insurance? You know.
Well, Joe Cherry would have been down there. I mean, it would have been like, you know, right?
I mean, but is that like, you know, how like you know, if you kill yourself, you don't get like
no, if
life
someone
insurance?
burns your building down, you're insured.
Okay, it doesn't matter
That's
who does it.
That's what you have insurance for.
But isn't that considered arson, kind of like if you live there?
Yeah, but arson is like if it's not insured if, like, you know, me and you over-insure the building that me and you own, and then we have like Amanda and my wife.
Well,
like,
people
burn
could
the
say
building
maybe
down
people
while we're
say
doing the radio
don't
show.
put up that crazy lunatic that burned the building down because he wanted to get his fucking insurance money from it.
That's, you know, crazier things have happened.
Yeah, no, you know, it's scary. So now, Chris, here's the question. They arrested this guy, right? He's probably going to do jail time, I would think.
Oh yeah.
Right? Maybe you could pick up the apartment at a good rate.
You know what?
You're already investigating?
No, I'm sure people are on it like right?
I would be on it, Chris. You better get
Like
that
white
freaking
on
apartment,
rice.
man. Come on.
Like white on rice, Dave.
What do you think those things? You know if his apartment looked good? I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe you could pick it up for a song and a dance.
No, those things are always like curses,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know. You never know. I'm sure his family's gonna want the apartment, but maybe you can buy it. Maybe they don't want to take care of it. It probably needs a complete. The guy probably was living like a slob in there. It probably needs a whole redo. I'm sure.
Yeah, but if it's oceanfront in Miami Beach, who cares?
That's right. That's what I'm saying. That's right up your alley. You like to do stuff like that.
I heard our friend Jose Raymond is going to check out your area.
Oh, he is? I didn't know that.
He's going to buy a house down there.
Wow, on the West Coast, on my side?
In your town.
Really? How come he didn't tell me this? Jose, call me. I got a lot of people moving down here.
He said Lloyd Dollar, who he prepped and looked tremendous at that most recent show,
Right.
Wherever it was. Lloyd lives either in your town or nearby.
He lives right here in my town. He lives in Fort Myers. I'm in Cape Coral.
And he said, you know, I don't know what he said. He said, you know, a $400,000 house is going to be in 10 years, whatever, $1 million. And that may or may not be true, but I said, you know what, Jose, I said, here's what Florida has. It only has two things, weather and no taxes.
Yeah.
So that alone will always make it a growth area, which means real estate prices will always go up.
And who cares? You're buying a house. You're going to spend half the amount of money or a third of the amount of money you spent in wherever he is in Boston there to get the same house.
Yeah.
So you saw my house, how big it is.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't even have a mortgage, you know, on that. So it's who's better than me. He could sell his house up there and move down here, and he'll live like a king. And you know what the funny thing is? I'm getting a lot of people to move down here. My friend Cole Hanzik is down here now. He's working for me. And who else was telling me they want to move down here? A couple people told me they want to move down here. Akeem Williams is thinking about moving down here. I'm going to turn the west coast of Southwest Florida into the new mecca of bodybuilding. Everyone's going to. I want everyone down here. I'll have people in the studios. We'll have TV shows. I'm telling you, this is Cape Coral is the #1 growing city, and I didn't move here because of that. It just is. It's the #1 growing city in the United States. Everywhere you look, there's houses being put up here. I'm shocked that you haven't been down here yet, scouting out, real estate.
I'm shocked. No, well, you've never met him either. My really good friend in Miami is a builder, and he's always, maybe we could start a little company, Dave. He's always asking me,
Let's do it.
let's build a house. But you know what? He still builds these houses in Miami that they're not like on the West Coast. I mean, they take a lot of money to build, and they sell for a lot of money. So I always say, like, what if somebody can't come up with $665,000 for a 2,200 square foot house?
You could put up a $100,000 house you spend and sell it for 200 here all day long. That's, I mean, the bang.
Dave, let's make a pact.
Chris and I, new hobby for me.
Yep. It'd definitely be a hobby.
Joining Chris's hobby. No, I'm joining Chris's. We can call ourselves three Schmendricks. Three Schmendricks. I mean, Chris, Jose Raymond, and Dave Palumbo are building houses now. We can start a reality show.
We could. There would be a reality show. You see the guy with the snakes, and he's got like a radio show, and what? What are you talking about?
The funny thing is,
completely nuts.
The two of us couldn't fucking change a light bulb together. We have to hire someone.
I don't know how to do anything.
And no one wants to work down here.
Dave, I was embarrassed. I was gonna post. I was dead serious.
Yeah.
I was gonna send you a picture. You would have cracked up. Of a towel bar that I hung up, and I was proud of myself.
Yeah, me too. When I do stuff like that, I get very proud of myself.
A towel
bar.
You
see, man, I can do anything I want. Anything I put my mind to, I can do. I just choose not to do it. That's all. So if we have any house builders who want to move to Florida also and work for our new company.
We have the guy in Miami. I'm telling you, he's a one-stop deal.
There we go. Sign me up. Sign me up. All right. Well, that's. It's getting late. I still have 600 emails to answer, and you know how that goes. Monday's always a busy day in the bodybuilding world. This coming weekend, what do we got up? We got some shows coming this weekend, don't we?
We do. I forget what it is. There's some big pro show coming this weekend.
I'm going to look on the schedule right now. Tell you, I hear Chris doing work in the backdrop.
No, I'm just looking at properties while we...
See, Chris is doing his hobby while we're talking.
You're it's an addiction, dude.
Yeah. Los Angeles Championships next week. So that's a big one. It's only pro figure. Never mind. Thought it was a big one.
Bikini show next weekend somewhere.
There's a bikini show everywhere. John Lindsay's got one every single weekend. Yep. Battle in the Desert. Pro bikini. Men's physique.
Is it really a battle? What's that, a bikini?
Yeah. What's this
Is
one?
the bikini also titled Battle?
Big Man Weekend Show, Pro Show. Jackpot $25,000, men's bodybuilding.
Where?
Spain, Alicante, Spain.
Next
weekend.
Give me the lineup.
Of course, God forbid they release the lineup, I don't know why they can't release the lineup, 2 weeks early so that Chris and I can handicap it on the show. I have no idea. I'm sure it'll be up the day of this radio show. Unfortunately, we record the radio show the day before that. But, yeah, no, it's going to be a great show. It looks like it's at the Grand Hotel Bali. And they got a really nice website for it, too. $25,000. Plus, they're giving out pro cards. Another one of these big European events. I like it. It's a great idea. Let's see if they have any athletes listed here.
Yeah, check it out.
If I were Hadi Choopan, I would do the Open. How about that? What do you think about that idea?
I think it's a good idea.
He might.
I think it's a good idea.
Right? With $25,000 up for who's going to beat him? Let's put it this way: who's going to beat him? All the guys who the big names of the Olympia are all qualified already. They're not competing anymore. How would Hadi Choopan do in the? How would he have done in that show that where Michael Lockett beat Sergio?
Oh man, he'd be no lower than third.
Yeah. By the way, Justin Rodriguez through Sid.
Sorry, Justin Rodriguez. I don't know if that's true then.
Justin Rodriguez is pissed that I think that Sergio deserved to beat him.
I didn't think they were. It was like.
Yep. Let me see if I can find the email. I'll read it to you. Exactly.
Oh no.
He didn't contact me, but he contacted Sid. Sid is a good. So here it is.
Yeah, let's hear it.
From Justin Rodriguez. I'm going to read on the air because since Justin won't come and do any interviews with anyone, I don't know why, but I've reached out. We've reached out to him before. Hey Dave, I have great respect for you, and I see your RxMuscle programs every day. So he watches. That's good. And I know you're a master in bodybuilding, but I cannot understand how you can say that Sergio beat me. If you're looking for a pose by pose in Chicago, maybe He won in most. It seems a child next to me. The big winner that day was Michael. Without a doubt, was the best man. So, Sergio, if you're listening, Justin thinks you were a child next to him on the stage. I don't happen to agree with that, but how do you respond to that, Chris?
I think Justin's a great bodybuilder.
I do too. I like his physique.
I think that, put it this way, when I saw him last in New York, what did he place in the New York Pro?
You think I can't remember what I did this morning? I told you that.
Well, I think that
He was in the top 5.
I think he's a very good bodybuilder. Just leave it at that.
Justin was third behind Juan. Remember?
Yeah.
So he's right up there. He's going to be winning pro shows next year. I'm telling you, he's right there.
Yeah, he has the ability to win.
But I think that Sergio is better than him. I do.
Pro shows next year. I think when we talked on the show last and reviewed the show, I said that he's improved. Every year that he's, quote, been on the scene, which he's been on the scene very, short period of time, but he's improved. And he's got a good structure. His issue is just, it's not condition and it's not maturity. It is like, it's that density has to simmer. Like he needs another year or so.
Muscle maturity. That's all it's called.
It's kind of sort of let me get it out for God's sake. I was going to say it's the Akeem Williams syndrome.
Yeah.
In other words, when Akeem first came out, people would say "You gotta get peeled." I'm like, dude, if he tries to get peeled, he's going to probably have to drop 40.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "It's going to take some time because." He just got big so fast. And it's the Jay Cutler syndrome. When Jay was 18, 19, 20, 21, it just took it to that year 99. It took him a while to let that muscle on that frame, I guess you call it simmer.
Percolate.
And just get dense. And you can't force that. In other words, you can't force it. That was the example with Hakeem. If he tried to force it and say, you know what, I'm just going to get peeled for the show when he just put on all that new muscle that first 2-3 years, then backfire on him.
Yeah.
It's time. That's all.
I agree. So.
But I thought he deserved third place at that show.
Yeah.
Just like I thought he deserved, roughly what he got in New York. I don't think he's being judged harshly.
No, I think he's being judged fairly.
Yeah, I do.
I love that him and Sergio go at it though. When Sergio hears this, he'll probably start up the Instagram war again. I'm sure. That's probably why he sent it to me. I'll get him on the show. He'll go on the show. He'll listen. I think he's just lazy. That's all. There's no reason for him not to come on the show. All right, Chris. Let's wrap this thing up. We're out of time until next week. Remember, with Heavy Muscle Radio,
the truth hurts.
Good night, everyone.